Hello YouTube and fellow DC Comic fans. I'm Kelly One Shot, and today we're going to talk about Shazam, the movie, which I just saw last night with my brother and my friend, and I just want to say that I really enjoyed this movie. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun. It was really enjoyable, really funny, really clever, and it was presented well at a fast pace that kind of was really enjoyable. And ultimately, I really liked what was happening, and it's a good film that I would recommend to comic book fans, to comic book movie fans, and just moviegoers and families across the board in general. I do want to mention that this is a heavily spoiler review. I'm going to pretty much go over what happened in the movie, let you know what I think, kind of explain some of the things that happen a little bit. So basically, the movie does start off where we see a young child named Thad Savanas, who ultimately becomes Dr. Savanas from the comic books. So we see Thad in the car with his father and his older brother, and the two of them kind of like, they crap on the kid. They make him feel like he's less than a man, like he's unworthy, like he's never going to become anything or amount to anything ever. And, you know, you can tell this messes with Thad Savanas a lot, and it kind of like builds this envy that he has ultimately to prove to them and himself that he can be worthy and he can be better than that. And we do see in the car that young Savanas uses this magic 8-ball to kind of ask it questions, which really just shows us his interest in magic, which is a part of his character. And he's asking the 8-ball these questions, and ultimately he starts seeing these symbols pop up on the 8-ball, and then he's warped into the hall where the Rock of Eternity is held, where the wizard Shazam is. And the wizard in this is aging, and he's losing his powers, and he's getting weaker. And the 7 deadly sins, who are also at the Rock of Eternity, who the wizard Shazam is trying to protect the world from being unleashed to again, he's getting weaker, and he's trying to choose a new champion. So he's trying to find someone who's pure of heart and who's worthy and who is purely good and is worthy of getting his powers, because ultimately he does mention later on in the movie, the wizard, that him and his 6 other wizards who used to protect this together, they chose a champion in the past, and that champion actually was responsible for releasing the 7 deadly sins upon the world and causing the death of countless civilizations. And so ultimately they chose wrong. Who they're referring to, without mentioning him at all, is Black Adam, who we do know that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has been casted to play like years ago. Like before this Shazam movie was even announced, The Rock was casted as Black Adam, and The Rock actually does have involvement with this movie. He's one of the executive producers, I believe, on this Shazam movie, because he's trying to help build this universe because he wants to play Black Adam down the road, which I really hope that we do eventually get to see that. Black Adam and The Rock are not in this movie in any capacity, so I just want to let you know that right now. Either way, we go back to the Rock of Eternity, where young Thaddeus is trying to get the powers from the wizard, and so the wizard's going to tempt him, and he's going to see if he's truly worthy of heart. And so the 7 deadly sins kind of show Savanas their power, which is this dark energy eye. And then young Savanas starts being like tempted and drawn in for this quest of power, because he can show his father and his brother that he is worthy, and he can get his kind of like revenge on the 2 of them. And so he's tempted to try to grab the eye instead of taking the power that the wizard is offering. And so the wizard realizes that young Savanas isn't worthy. He's tempted easily by power, and he's not pure of heart. And so the wizard kind of like yells at young Savanas, and he also tells young Savanas that he'll never be worthy, that he's tempted by dark power, and he kicks him out of the Hall of Eternity. Now this does send Savanas on a path where he's ultimately trying to prove that he's worthy. He wants to get back to the wizard, and he wants to reclaim that power, that evil eye, because he's accepted that he's not worthy and that maybe his alignments are different. And he's actually being kind of like contacted through the 8-ball, and it says, "Come find us," because they want to choose Savanas as their negative champion to usher in the powers of the 7 deadly sins. So that's pretty cool, which sends, like I said, Savanas down this path where he actually is as a doctor, kind of studying these different stories that people have over the years of their encounters that are very similar, where they get brought to this Hall of Eternity, and there's this wizard who says that they need to save the world and they need to be the champion and take on their power. So multiple people have had this experience throughout society, and I think that's pretty cool, and that is actually seen in the New 52 version of the Shazam reboot that happened in like 2011. So that's really cool that they kind of did that in this, and it shows that like other people have been potentially chosen but also deemed unworthy for different reasons to not be the champion. So we actually then we see a mother at a carnival with a young child, and the child they're going through a carnival, and the mother's trying to win him a tiger or something like that in a dart game, and then they're kind of walking home, and she gives the kid this little compass that if he follows it, he can always find his way back. And then the compass falls, the kid chases after the compass, the mother walks away, and then the two kind of get lost in the crowd and don't find each other. And then we end up realizing that that's young Billy Batson, and then we kind of see him skipped a few years later. I believe he's 14 in this movie, and he's getting in a lot of trouble with the law, and he's messing with the cops, and he's running from foster home to foster home, and he's been to like 6 or 7 different foster families, and every time he runs away, none of them want to take him back. He's too much trouble. But ultimately what young Billy's trying to do is he's trying to find his mom, and he's looking up the databases inside of a cop car to try to find the different Batsons throughout the city and just pretty much visit all of them. He visits some, and it ends up being totally not his mom at all, so he's just kind of checking him off the list. But then he gets arrested by the cops for messing with their car, and then he's sent to a new foster family, which is, the foster family where we see like Freddy Freeman and Mary and everybody else, and Pedro and all that stuff. And it is really great. Darla was so great and funny in the movie. Pretty much any scene that this young actress Darla was in was like really cute. It was really funny and even sad at times. She was a really great actress, and I think that they chose well. Pretty much all of the characters in the movie look like they do in the comic, and that's really cool. They did a great job in casting. This is where kind of Billy Batson runs into Freddy Freeman, who is pretty much the more important of the members of this family, and Billy's trying to resist this family, and he's going to push away, and he's going to keep doing what he does. But this family is very loving, very caring, and like I said, we see Freddy Freeman, who's really funny throughout this movie. He's probably one of the best parts of the movie, consistently on point. His character is awesome. It's really funny. There's some times in the middle where it's not, but he's really into superheroes, and he lets us know to Billy. He even has a bullet that struck off of Superman's chest and fell down, and he kind of saved it and stuff like that. Billy does steal this from Freddy down the road, which does come in later, because eventually there comes a part where at the high school, Freddy Freeman is being bullied because he is a handicap. He does have a crutch on one arm, and he can't fully walk correctly, so he's being picked on and beat up by these bullies, and this eventually causes Billy to stand up and defend him and fight back and beat up the bullies who are trying to beat up Freddy. And then they chase after Billy. Billy runs away. He ends up inside of a subway, and it's there that he is then also shown these symbols, and he goes to the Rock of Eternity where Billy Batson meets the wizard. At this point, the wizard needs to choose his champion, because at this point, Dr. Savanas, after talking to all of those people and studying all of their stories, he has found the code sequence of symbols to find his way back to the Rock of Eternity, and he has reclaimed that demonic eye, and the deadly sins are now inside of Dr. Savanas and have chosen him as their champion. And he's already going out, and he killed his father and he killed his brother in what was a really great office scene at the top of a Savannah's Industry, which his father ran. The father in the movie is actually played by the same man who played Lionel Luthor in the Smallville series, and I knew I recognized him somewhere, but that was really cool. Either way, so Savannah's is the negative champion at this point, and so the wizard now more than ever needs to choose a new champion, and he deems that Billy Batson is worthy and that he shall receive his powers. Billy jokes about this and whatever because he doesn't really understand it fully, but he ultimately takes the wizard's powers on by saying the name Shazam, and then he's brought back to our world, but he is as his older self, the Shazam, which is pretty cool. But he doesn't really know how to handle this. He doesn't even know what his powers are or anything about superheroes like that. So he actually goes back to Freddy, and Freddy's into all the superheroes. He knows all this stuff. So the two of them like run these tests, and it's done in this montage kind of scene, which is really funny, where they're testing all the different powers that he might have, and they kind of discover that his powers are like pretty much strength, speed, lightning zaps, flight. You know, he's got all the powers. Shazam is an acronym for like the Greek gods, like, you know what I mean, the speed of Hermes and all that stuff. I'm not going to go into the acronym. You can look it up. I don't want to go over it right now. Either way, each letter actually stands for the power of a Greek god, which is the powers that Shazam has. So eventually they kind of test this out. They learn Billy's powers, and the Foster family thinks Billy ran away because that's what he does, and he doesn't know how to turn himself back into a kid. He eventually realizes that like just saying the name of the wizard, Shazam, is how he transforms back and forth, because the lightning bolt strikes him down, which is very comic book accurate. That's what happens, and that lightning strike is actually something that Billy uses as a KO move a lot in the comic books. So it's pretty cool that he kind of like realizes that. But Billy, after he gets his powers, is actually like very selfish. Like him and Freddy are like charging up ATMs to get money. They're charging people's cell phones. They're walking into convenience stores and stopping them from being robbed, which is a really funny scene, by the way. And then they take beer as like a reward. They drink it, they vomit it up because they're both 14 years old, and then they kind of get candy and snacks. So they're kind of like, and even Billy's out in public just kind of like showing off, zapping lightning, trying to make money and be flashy and be a show off as opposed to actually being a hero. This does lead to a scene down the road where Billy as Shazam is kind of like shooting lightning bolts in the air, which causes an accident on the highway, and a bus is going to fall off of the overpass. Billy saves the day by saving a problem poorly that he ultimately caused, which this is kind of what makes him realize like he's got to take this a little more seriously because his actions have repercussions and he needs to use his powers to be a hero. And Freddy kind of is one of the things that pushes this to Billy and helps himself realize this. Right after Billy saves the day, and because of all the publicity that he's bringing onto himself, because the two of them, Freddy and Billy, are actually even uploading these to YouTube and kind of creating this new superhero, which they call him like Captain Sparkle Fingers and all this stuff. They can't call him Captain Marvel, but you know they want to. So Dr. Savanas goes to Billy because the deadly sins tell him that there's only one stronger than him, and that's the wizard's new chosen champion, and that Savanas' best interest is to take down the champion now and to steal his powers before he takes him down. So Savanas goes up to Shazam, and right after he stopped the bus from falling, and the two of them have this fight. And in this fight, you can tell Billy's scared because he's actually met by a supervillain, and he kind of handles this like a kid does because he's a kid ultimately, and he runs away from the problem by turning back into Billy Batson after this long fight that he realizes that he's not strong enough to win. So then eventually the Shazam wizard, or not the Shazam wizard, I'm sorry, Dr. Savanas watches a film tape of right after Shazam saving the bus, and Freddy Freeman is arguing with Billy, and he's trying to teach him responsibility a little bit, but ultimately Savanas realizes that this kid is important to Shazam, and so he sees Freddy Freeman, and Dr. Savanas kidnaps him and tries to get more information about him, about where Billy is, because Savanas realizes that Shazam is a child as well. So Freddy kind of gives up the information to Savanas. Meanwhile, we see Billy actually going back to the foster home, and he gets information like he finally accepts them as his family a little bit at this point, and they're going out and trying to help Billy find his parents. So they looked up all this information, and then they narrowed it down that this is where Billy's mother is. So Billy then goes to where his actual mother is. In the comic books, Billy's parents are dead. His mom and dad are both dead. But in this, they're alive, and we find out that the father has been in prison, and after the father went into prison, the mother went back to her maiden name, which is why it was harder for Billy to find her. But he then finds her and she's in a really rough situation, and she explains to Billy that she was like a kid. She was 17 when she had Billy, and she had all these problems, and it looks like she had a drug problem as well, and she was currently with an abusive boyfriend. And she even starts it off by saying, he asks who's at the door. The boyfriend asks who's at the door, and she said, "Don't worry, it's nobody," which is an instant slap in the face to Billy. But then she talks about it. She explains that she did see Billy and that she could have saved him, and that she saw him with the cops, but she saw this as her opportunity to get away from her problems and to run away. And so she didn't try to look for Billy all this time. And it's a really sad scene, and you really feel for Billy. But he then gives her back the compass, and he says, I don't need it. You need to find your way. I've already found mine, and I'm going to go back to my real family. And when he does go back to the orphanage, he actually, or the group home rather, he gets a call from Freddy, and it's Savannah's at the group home, and he's got the rest of the family kidnapped. And so Billy has to go there and stop Savannah's, and it ends up being this whole thing where the deadly sins are going to try to kill the family unless Billy gives the powers. Savannah's opens the door to the Rock of Eternity because Shazam submits to Savannah's, and he's going to give up the wizard's power to Savannah's. They go to the Rock of Eternity, and then we kind of realize here that when the sins are outside of Savannah's body, he's weak because the kids run in through the door as well, and they throw a batarang at Savannah that Freddy Freeman found from Batman, or it's a replica or something. He throws it at Savannah's head and he bleeds, which shows you that when the sins are out of his body, he's weak. So they kind of devise this plan. They escape the Rock of Eternity with the help of Billy, and then they kind of go to this carnival again, which is where the end scene happens. And Savannah does follow them to this carnival, and he pretty much threatens that he's going to attack everybody if the champion doesn't come up. And this is where Billy finally stands up in the final act, and he's like, I have to defend my family, because Savannah has his family captured again because the sins, they all ran off and they were trying to divide the sins out of Savannah's body, but the sins captured each one of the kids. And Billy is going to fight Savannah now, finally, with at least the sins outside of him. So that kind of happens here. And then Savannah is about to get Billy's powers again because he kind of is winning this fight still. But Billy tricks him, and he gets the rest of the family to hold the staff, and then they get the powers of the Shazam family. Each one of them, I'm pretty sure, only gets the power of one of the acronyms. So like they get like the strength, and one of them gets the speed, and one of them gets the flight, and one of them gets the lightning zap. And even that's handled really good. And even the Shazam family, the Captain Marvel family, looks all the way they're supposed to, and their suits look really awesome. I do think it's a little soon. I'm not a huge fan of the extended Captain Marvel family myself, but because I kind of feel like it lessens Billy, though Billy has the powers of all of them, so he's the true champion, but he shares his powers to the family, which you kind of know it's going to happen eventually if you know that the Shazam family are going to be in this movie. Each one of them battles like kind of a separate sin, and then Billy's able to battle Savannah's, and Billy realizes that he still can't hurt Savannah's because there's still one of the sins inside of him, and that's the sin that Savannah's most identifies with, and that's envy. Because throughout all of this, he's trying to take Billy's power. He wanted to prove that he was worthy. He wanted power. So Savannah is envious. So Billy kind of finds a way to smack talk envy out of coming out by saying that he's the weakest and that he wishes that he had what Billy had. So eventually the sin leaves the body, and that causes Savannah to be powerless, and then Billy kind of like yokes him up, brings him back to the carnival, and then at this point he's able to start pulling the eye of power, the dark power eye, out of Savannah's eye, because all the sins are outside of him, so he's powerless. All the sins do kind of go back inside of Savannah's, but Billy's strong enough at this point, and he pulls the eye all the way out, and he holds it in his hand, and all these people come up and celebrate the Shazam family's victory. And Billy takes the eye back to the Rock of Eternity. He puts it in the stone, and the sins then reform into the statues, and so they're not unleashed upon the world anymore. And then we see that Savannah is inside of a prison, and it's here that it takes a really, really cool turn too in the post-credit scene, because we see that Savannah is trying to draw the symbols, and he's going crazy, and he's trying to escape because he wants the power again, and he wants this quest for power. Even though I do want to say that in the comic books, Sylvanus doesn't have like this strength, this speed, this flight, and all of these powers that he has in the movie. That's more something that Black Adam has. So they kind of combined Black Adam and Dr. Sylvanus a little bit, and they kind of, just so he could, like, on a cinematic level, match Billy, which I was okay with. It was kind of done in a good way. It didn't really hurt it too much, but ultimately, like, Sylvanus is just like a really smart businessman and scientist and inventor who, because of his eye, he's able to see magic, and he has this quest for magic. Because Billy's powers are rooted in magic, obviously, and it's a big thing to do with Shazam, but there are some differences in his comic book powers and his movie powers. But now that he doesn't have the eye, he doesn't have the powers. But when he's inside the prison cell, we then hear a voice that says maybe the two of us can be the best of friends, which, if, like I said, you read the New 52, and even if you're reading the current Rebirth run of Shazam written by Jeff Johns, you do know that Sylvanus is working with Mr. Mind / Mastermind, who is this little like worm caterpillar creature. In different iterations, he's from different places, but he's from Venus, I think. I don't think they say where he's from in this one, but he uses this little box to talk, and he's from a planet of super hyper smart worm species who are able to like do slight mind control. They kind of worm their way inside of people's ears and take control of them, and he's very smart in and of himself. And either way, he made his way to Earth. He's a negative worm. You can look up more about him if you want. That's the basis of him. But he's like from 1940 or something like that. So he's wicked old, going back to Fawcett Comics. But he is in Sylvanus' cell, and the two of them are going to work together, which probably means that the worm's going to crawl inside of Sylvanus' ears to give him more powers, and then Sylvanus is able to reactivate his eye and see magic and go after Billy again. So they're going to still do stuff, and I thought Mark Strong did a great job, and I thought he really looked like Dr. Sylvanus, so that was really awesome. I thought everybody kind of looked the way that they were supposed to, and it was really funny. The movie was really funny, and all the jokes were organic. I do think in my particular showing it was even funnier because there was this one group a few seats to the left of me that were hilarious. They were just laughing in such a manner that it was infectious. So we had a really great time, and it was a really good movie. And I was really surprised and kind of blown away by what happened. I do hope to see another sequel down the road. I think it'd be cool to continue the Sylvanus story, and then the Mastermind, now that he's there working with Sylvanus. And I do want to see The Rock eventually play Black Adam, because Black Adam is ultimately the real negative champion. He's the one who does have pretty much the exact matching powers of Billy, because the wizard chose Adam Teth back in the Egyptian days as their champion, and then he ended up releasing the seven deadly sins, and he didn't live up to expectations. So I want to see the return of Black Adam. And actually, in the comic books, the reason that the wizard wants to get the powers to a new champion so much is because Black Adam has been released from the Rock of Eternity after being sealed away, and it wasn't like the seven deadly sins. It was the return of Black Adam that rushed the wizard to pick a new champion. But yeah, I hope we get to that eventually. I had a really great time, and I enjoyed it. I hope you check it out. Yeah, I loved the Captain Marvel movie. It was great. Shazam was awesome. So I'm Kelly One Shot. Take care, have a great day, and goodbye!